Hi everyone, this is another Kundalini Collective podcast, but today it's an interesting one. We have Joe DeRiso and Dana Swain, uh, and we are talking about a new initiative we're starting, which uh, is it a bi-monthly Zoom group in the States? Is that
Every
correct?
month,
Every month,
once a
right?
month.
So once a month. Okay, fine. So, um, just to give you some context, we at the Kundalini Collective have been running a monthly Zoom group based in the UK for the last, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years. And it's been going really well and it's been growing. But many of our people come from the States and the time does not always suit everybody. And recently we asked Joe whether he wanted to start a US group. And Joe asked Dana, who's also on our committee, to help him. And they want to start a New Zealand group in the States. So what we thought we'd do is have a short discussion where Joe and Dana will introduce themselves and we'll just talk about their work, how they came to the Kundalini Collective, and about why Zoom support groups can be helpful. So I'll hand it over to you. So either Joe or Dana. Dana, why don't you start? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. I live in Northern California. Let's see, I had my first Kundalini experience in my early 20s, and I recall that it was very disconcerting. I didn't know what was happening, and I didn't feel like I had anyone that I could talk to, which exacerbates the emotional anxiety when you're having this kind of experience. Later, I did find people who really helped me. Some teachers, and just knowing what it was incredibly calming. And then working with it for a number of years. I'm in my 50s now, so I've been working with Kundalini for a very long time. Um, I I worked on my Ph.D. in Jungian psychology, and then my topic for my dissertation was on Jung archetypes and Kundalini, similarities, differences, and how they can support each other. Um, a member of the Kundalini Collective read my dissertation online and we started talking, and she told me about this Kundalini Collective, which I was very excited about. I think it's a great group, and I've joined what I could, but it's been difficult. Sometimes the hours have been difficult because I'm 8 hours difference. And so when Joe approached me and said, "Would you like to do a discussion group in the U.S. hours?" I was really happy to be a support, kind of play it forward for what's been supported for me. And I think the discussion groups are super valuable and just normalizing the Kundalini experience, even if we don't all have the same experience.
Thanks,
Joe?
Dana. Yeah, Joe, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got here.
Well, my own Kundalini awakening happened many years ago, and it was actually quite different than what most people experience. Mine was simple, direct, and complete. But it left me in a stage of, confusion about integration. What do I do after this? And it wasn't until I joined a Sufi order whose teaching was really to as they say, make God a reality in your life. My teacher, Pir Vilayat, said, as wonderful as samadhi is, it's not the end stage of spiritual development. It must be followed by awakening in life. So that's kind of how I got interested in what this group is doing is that, you have these wonderful experiences, but then what do I do? What's it mean to me? And I got involved. Actually, it was during COVID. I couldn't do much at home, so I started going online. Discovered this group. Started joining some of the Zoom meetings. Was asked by Samir and Alan to do a podcast just to review, my spiritual journey and specifically to talk about, how Sufism has, influenced the direction and shape of my life. I've been I'm a retired IT worker. I'm a professionally trained dancer. I've performed in many performances. I've raised a child. So I've really lived in the world following that awakening. But I recently, well, for the past few years, I've been feeling a need to offer some help with where I can from this, spiritual perspective. And I recently became certified as a spiritual emergence coach through Emma Bragdon's integrative mental health facility. Mental Health University, rather. And spiritual emergencies, of which Kundalini and energetic awakenings are just one type. They often include, near-death experiences, issues from psychedelic drugs, some just emotional traumas, some just having vision, a whole variety of things. But, very often how you deal with them and the approach, they're very similar. And one of the key things that I've learned from that is that Western medicine doesn't really know how to deal with spiritual emergence, and the effects of Kundalini awakening. I mean, there's a few psychologists, psychotherapists, they have inklings into it and can offer some assistance. But, and the other thing is it's not a simple diagnosis. And it's not one simple thing that's happening when someone has an energetic awakening. The variety of, signs or symptoms, experiences run the whole gamut from hearing voices, having visions, lights, sounds, and whatever. And everybody's journey is different, where they're at in their stages. Kundalini rises and comes, and works to whatever. And these groups, just getting together, for people to have a space to say, hey, this is what happens. I haven't been able to talk with anyone about it. There's no one who understands this. It's just wonderful to create an environment. It's not recorded. It just gives people a chance to open up to people that might understand, might sympathize, have compassion with it, and can suggest, support and help for where you're at in their journey. Because once it's over, it's really a pretty wonderful experience, despite the issues and hardships and struggles that you might go through in the process.
Dana, do you have anything to add to Joe and about why perhaps these online groups could be helpful?
Yeah, I love what Joe said. And I think so some people have a really lovely experience and some people have a very difficult experience. And it's nice to have those two kind of like the entire gamut of experience because they are so various. There's so much variety that I think for those maybe not having such a great experience, it's nice to know that there is a good outcome possible and then it can be otherwise. And then also there's an incredible sharing of knowledge, which I think is super important because things are so different and a sharing of resources as well. Like just being on these discussion calls, I have taken down names, I've gone to websites. There's so many ways that people are integrating Kundalini into like Kundalini and trauma. There are people that just work with that, or people who work with meditation practices, or people who are, I don't know, bringing it in with shamanism, or like a variety of different things that are out there. And these discussion groups really help bring the information together and the resources together. So I think that's another benefit of it.
So, what should people expect? So, people who haven't actually attended any of these groups, whether in the UK, and let's say they're completely new, what should they expect in one of these groups? Dana or Joe, what do you think?
Well, one thing when we start a session, I've hosted several of these. We always look to see, who's been here before, who's new. And, we do ask that you open up your video if you're comfortable with that so we can see you. It just helps build community and communication. But that we also say, if you're first time here and you just want to listen, get comfortable, fine. You're not under any obligation to share. It's whatever you feel you need to do. If you have a question or an issue that you'd like to bring up, bring it up and we'll get discussion around that and then we'll move on. We try to give everyone an opportunity to talk and we give everyone an opportunity to reflect on and express what thoughts they might have about what someone's questioning or talking about or experiencing. I mean, the idea is really to have a community support, peer support. That's what it is. I'm not a Sufi teacher. I'm not a Kundalini master. I've been through this myself. I'm learning what other people are going through, and I'm just offering what when I've encountered such an issue, how I work through it. And I also can now, because I've been learning a lot, I can relate. Oh, other people have had this. This is how they, were grounded and through that. I've been trying to integrate some more of the Sufi practices that have been important to me with what may be helpful for people going through Kundalini. And the one thing I've been kind of working with a little bit is one practice that I've done a lot of is the recitations of the divine names. These are the 99 names of Allah. Like Ya Qudus, which is the magnificence of Allah, and then Ya Qahar was personal power and strength. And I've noticed that as people are going through the Kundalini process, the Kundalini is working through certain issues. If it gets stuck around the heart chakra, maybe that's where they need Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim. Work on the practices that expand, loosen, and clear that. That might allow Kundalini to raise. And same with, if you've got headaches and issues in here, Ya Nur, clarity, light, Ya Nur, Ya Nur. You don't just say these, you've got to reflect on the principle, the word behind it, and kind of cultivate that within. And that might be helpful for navigating through the process. I don't know if I haven't, suggested it to anyone. I'm just experimenting with it to see how that might work. But that's just something, I think I might be able to offer in the future. And I should say at this point, I'm not doing, I know Data does one-on-one consulting. That's at this point, I'm only facilitating these sessions, but I am continuing my studies. I meet with the Spiritual Emergence Group once a month for ongoing training and discussion. And I do hope to be able and available to help on one-on-one in the future.
I should add that the Kundalini Collective and all of our support groups are non-hierarchical, they're non-denominational. We kind of accept people from all different cultures and allow people to talk from their own subjective lenses of this phenomenon. So whether it's Jewish, Islamic, Christian, Hindu, although the word Kundalini might be a Hindu word, we're very accepting and very open for people of all faiths and religions to come and share under the idea that this is a phenomenon that crosses all paths and all boundaries. And as you said quite correctly, Joe, it's a peer-to-peer. So there's no guru, there's no expert. We just facilitate peers to support each other rather than have a central figure who is, let's say, higher up the scale. We just look at ourselves as equal. Dana, any thoughts to this, and anything that you want to bring? What's perhaps new or about what you will bring? Is there anything that you want to share about your own journey that you might bring to the table yourself?
Good question. Well, I do want to also reiterate that it is pretty spontaneous and informal, but also all people have their different perspectives and paradigms, and so that's it's great. It's kind of a melting pot in that way. I probably, I worked and had teachers in different traditions, most recently in Kashmir Shaivism, but I'm also feeling very much like it is its own process. And so I do kind of coaching one-on-one, but and I have kind of a Jungian lens that I look at through a lot, and alchemy and things. But again, I feel like if I'm facilitating, I'm just holding space for people to really be spontaneous, share what's true for them or what's coming up. And I've asked questions in the group, and I've found it very interesting. That's something that I thought like, oh, this is a kind of a strange thing that happened. And then I asked the group, has anybody had this experience? And people are like, oh, yes, I've had that experience, which is so, it's both like, oh, that's great, I'm not alone, but also it's fun. It's like, oh, I see. There's another way that this happens, and here are some ways that it gets integrated. And I think that's, I guess, back to resource sharing, but also kind of you can build what your foundation is. You can actually build and start integrating. And community is great. I think in the US also, it's really hard. I don't know if it's the same in the UK, but I find in these times it's difficult to find community. We're also busy on our, of course, this will be Zoom because we have so many different time zones, but we're also busy in our lives, and there's not a lot of space outside of like if you go to a church or some kind of spiritual community. There's work and there's family, but there's no place. You can't go to a cocktail party and talk about your Kundalini or your spiritual awakening, experience. So I think it's just, you might find people that you really enjoy spending time with, even if you're not in the same state. It can really be an enriching experience.
So just to reiterate both of what you said, we had a survey done. It's not a live survey that you can go to on our website, and it's always growing. But one of the key helpful aspects of an awakening process is community and validation through that community. And what people tend to find is that when they can safely say aspects about their awakening exploration within a group that's private but open, that it kind of gives them a sense of affirmation and what they're not mad or delusional. And I think this is quite an important part of the process. So opening this up to a completely new time zone is a very very good idea, and I guess it's going to bring a new community to us, which is also very good. Uh, and you both have different lenses. So Joe, you come from a Sufi background. Dana, you come from a Jungian background, and you're studying Kashmir Shaivism. So these are different ways to look at this, and this is also quite good because everyone brings something to the table, and they're bringing a different lens, and actually that gives us different perspectives, and that's always good to broaden our understanding of this process. Is there anything else you want to share? Anything that you may have learned from these? I mean, Joe, you've hosted a number of these sessions in the UK, on the UK time zone. What have you learned yourself from these sessions? You've met a few people.
Yeah, it's just, well, I think it's the way, as what Dana and you've also mentioned, there is just such a wide variety of things that happen as a result of Kundalini. And I think what is important is in our time, and I know Samir, you're kind of pretty interested in this whole process. There's a collective consciousness evolving in what's happening now. It's like the universal Kundalini has decided to start awakening in humanity. Like ready or not, here I come,
Right.
and, and people are getting triggered by some emotional trauma, some physical trauma, just out of the blue, happenings. Some through meditation, some through some psychedelics or plant medicines. And there's no accounting for rhyme or reason to who or why or when, and that's remarkable. And it's also, I think, important for us to, as Dana used the word, create a space. We're here now. If you're experiencing, curious, whatever, come here and at least bring it out. Help talk about it. See where you're at. See what's happening. Not just from a personal journey, but realize this is a universal collective evolution that's occurring in our time today.
And
Yeah, and
Dana, so go ahead.
I was thinking that as both of you were talking, like I like to say Kundalini is catching. So like literally sometimes, when you have meetings with people, if not for everybody, but sometimes the activation gets stronger by being in community. Not for everyone, but that can happen. But also to the point of having community, Kundalini can then be catching in the sense of moving that Overton window, making it more socially acceptable, taking it out of the closet, and really normalizing the processes. And the more that we can do that, and the more people find communities like this, the more we're changing the cultural narrative around these experiences.
That's great. Yeah. Well, let me ask you a couple of final questions then. Just from your own experience, but also working with other people, both of you have done that. What kind of things seem to help people in their progression through this awakening process?
Well, I would say, and what my own experience, it wasn't with Kundalini, but which is with me, it was a process of, softening the ego, which is really a call to surrender yourself. So with a Kundalini, you have to accept this as a positive, energetic force that's good. And you're not going to completely understand what's happening, but you need to believe in it, uh, and surrender to it, surrender to the process and relax and work with what's happening and what's being expressed as it progresses through and clears blockages and brings insight, changes in your personality. You might start developing, compassion, which you never had before, and that allowed it to progress further. Or, you started thinking more about what's needed in your life now, and the Kundalini is making that an issue for you to do. So I think it's the surrender. I think is in belief and realizing that it's a positive force in our lives is pretty critical.
Yeah, and I think these groups really normalize the experience. I mean, they're pretty unusual experiences, but when unusual experiences can be normalized to an extent, that resistance that Joe is speaking of, because it happens on a physical and emotional and a mental level, this resistance, right? So when it becomes normalized, then and you realize you're not alone, then I think what happens is that resistance has an opportunity to relax, and then the process becomes much easier, or at least if it's not like completely easy in terms of physical experiences, it's just you can more relax into it and say, okay, that's what's happening. It's okay. You can be curious rather than afraid. And I think curiosity is much more helpful than a state of rationalization or fear. So this is something that on so many levels the Kundalini Collective offers.
Is there anything, Dana, that has helped you personally on this progression?
Yeah, well, the first time when I just had a teacher, because I had no idea what was going on, and I happened to synchronistically find a teacher. That normalization process was really helpful, and for me, it also was grounding. And for me, grounding looked a lot like taking walks, actually being pretty physically active. Um, because it kind of, I don't know on what level of it's burning prana. It's not like burning the energy, but it felt like movement and being outside and really having my feet on the ground was super helpful for just getting good. I think that Kundalini often comes at night. And so often we don't get a good night's sleep. So to the extent that you're using your body and your body is not exhausted, but tired in a appropriately physical way, through some physical exertion, then I think that kind of evens out the process. That was true for me. It may not be true for everyone, but and meditation was also very helpful just because there's a kind of a going inside and paying attention to the subtleties of how the energy is working really helps it sometimes push through, like even experiencing, oh, I feel that resistance in my heart, or as Joe was saying, and then like really taking a breath and relaxing around that, then often the energy would kind of move quicker. So so meditation, normalization, and literally grounding physically and in nature were helpful for me.
Right. That's great advice. So is there anything final that you guys want to add about these new Zoom sessions?
Well, one thing we haven't said what time and what date we're going to do them. Yeah, we're starting initially to offer them once a month, the first Thursday of every month at 8 o'clock New York time. That'll be 5 o'clock Pacific time, and hopefully we'll start them next month in October. And then I'll be hosting the first one, and then Dana the next, and then her and I will take turns. And we might get some new host facilitators, as we get people involved in this. Right now, I don't know, is it like maybe 4 or 5 within the UK that are doing those sessions? And so, it'd be nice if we build up a community here, get more hosts and facilitators, and really, expand what we're doing. It is a collective. This isn't mine and Dana's, thing
Right,
here.
right.
We're part of the Kundalini Collective, and we're open and growing.
Which means also that it's not exclusively to North America. We're just offering a different time zone. So, but if people just like to be up at midnight and they want to come, then they're welcome to join us.
Very true.
Yeah, yeah. It's open to anybody wherever you are in the world. It just happens to be the US time zone, and it'll be Thursdays.
Right.
All right, that's really good. Okay, and where can people find out about the links? Where will they be posted?
Well, we'll be putting them out on the forum, same
Yeah,
under the events, the same as we currently do for the the London or the UK based time zone.
yeah.
Same
Oh,
way.
yeah.
So
Okay, so every month there'll be a post in the Kundalini Collective forums under events. Either Dana or Joe will be posting the date, which will be the last Thursday, or sorry, the
first
first
Thursday.
Thursday, and it'll be 7 p.m. New York time, 5 p.m. Pacific time. But the Zoom link will be different, and that'll be posted on the. Or would it be different? Sorry, might be the same.
Yeah.
It'll be different than the one that the UK uses, but we're going to
Oh,
try
yeah.
to keep the same one
Okay,
consistent.
fine.
Just click on
Fine,
it.
fine. But anyway, so if you check the boards, you will see it. All right, guys, thank you. Is there anything else to add, or is that everything?
I just want to extend my appreciation to you, Samir and Alan, for really starting this Kundalini Collective community website. It's just been wonderful for so many people. And I've gotten, I've grown and learned in the process. And, I thank you for that.
Yes, agreed.
Well, thank you, guys. And it's a collective, and so it's everyone's contributing to it, and it's the sum of its parts, or greater than the sum of its parts. So thanks a lot. Okay, so we'll post everything in the description of this video. It'll be posted every month in the event section of the website, and we'll put it in the newsletter as well, so that you'll get all the information you need. So yeah, thanks a lot, guys, and I'll see you on the Zoom sessions.
All right. Thanks, Samir.
Yeah.